Alright, this is a response to the Metatron video on spinning. His reference is that he's saying that with certain kinds of weapons, it would make sense to spin. And my response to this is, yes, but let's figure out why. This is the information. If you spin, you're trying to increase your force. Force equals mass times acceleration. Acceleration is equal to the vector minus the vector at the end when you actually make contact, minus the vector at the beginning of the situation, or the change in your vectors. Velocity, not vector. Velocity, which is, okay. This is the problem with math, which I've already mentioned. There's lots of different terms, and they have the exact same symbol, and it's a mess. The V could either be vector or velocity. So this is the velocity, and I've written it down, so I can't be really that wrong. It says it on the paper. And so when you tear apart velocity, velocity is distance over time. So when you really tear it down, what he's doing is he's saying this information right here, where you have force equals mass over the change in your velocity, the change in distance over time, divided by time, is multiplied over there. So as long as your d, your distance, is huge, which is why they spin, that's why those kicks are spinning. Because what they have is a foot, and feet, or hands, or any other body part, actually have a very little mass to them. And so what you're trying to do is you're trying to increase the distance because you can't increase the mass. As long as you have your time down really, really small, and that's what he's talking about by being a master of it. He's talking about let's decrease your time because we've got muscle memory and all of these things that are decreasing our time, which is divided. Notice that when you do this, you divide the thing by time twice. Distance divided by time, the change in distance divided by time. You know, if you want to do it over here, distance clearer. The change in distance divided by time. So at the end minus at the beginning over time. These are both divided by time initially. So everything's divided by time more than once, right? So what he's saying is, okay, let's try to make certain that we have a huge amount of distance at a really, really small time, which is, of course, means that we do it really, really fast to be able to increase our force, because we can't increase our force based on mass. Because we're using a blunt object, we need huge amounts of force because it has to be spread over a large surface area. So if we're spreading out that force over a large surface area, we need more force for each part of that surface area to accomplish. So that's the blunt instrument, which is I totally agree with there. But the problem is, what we're saying we need to increase it that way. Well, the truth is, spinning above your head will give you the exact same amount of force as spinning around your back. So that's why you have a flail. That's why they created the flail, right? Is so I can spin this ball, and usually they weren't balls. They very rarely had anything to them that was spiky. If it was spiky, it was very small spikes. But it was this ball on a chain, and the chain will make it so that as it goes around, I've increased the distance multiple times. Going around means I've increased that distance beyond what it could be even spinning around myself, and then I'm going to hit someone with it after it's already done that. So the distance situation doesn't have to be behind your back. And that's the thing. The difference between proper technique is I don't want to give up those things. Yes, it's possible to figure out a situation where giving up those things doesn't matter as much, but why give up them at all if I can just be able to negate the problem by going a different direction? So the reason why people don't usually go around the back is because over your head is just as good. Because putting more mass into it is just as good. Because the thing is, a kick or punch that is thrown by just your arm and spinning around you is actually just as good as if you do proper technique and put your whole body weight behind that punch or kick. Now, if your whole body weight is less than a certain factor, if you're a small guy, maybe that distance is more valuable to you than the mass increase of putting your whole body weight behind it. I weigh 200 pounds. I put my whole body weight behind something, that's going to hurt people. I know, I'm ex-Army. It'll hurt people. I went through some training, and I know how to hurt people. Now, I don't want to hurt people on purpose. That's all good training tells you that repeatedly. But the thing is, what I do know is that it can be done, and it can hurt. I had a broken rib after training. After the training, that's it. All it was training, and I still had a broken rib afterward. Well, it was cracked. It wasn't like broken. It wasn't. But the thing is, it's important to realize two things with that, right? A very simple, very clear hit can hit a very fragile person, and people are very fragile compared to metal, and do huge amounts of damage. So you don't have to do that. And then on the other hand, you can take the advantage of gaining distance and reducing your times in different ways. The puzzle is trying to figure out how to increase distance or mass enough that you create enough force to go and do whatever damage you're trying to do with the weapon you've got. So, Scholar Gladiatoria likes to use, Matt Easton of Scholar Gladiatoria likes to use the reference of saying, it depends on the circumstances, it depends on the environment, it depends on the situation. He repeats that over and over and over, and it's true. But the thing is, the reason why it's true is because you're trying to follow that math. This math equation is representing what you're trying to do. And when you do that right, it can be done in a million different ways. And that's, of course, what makes me angry about math. And that's also what makes the martial arts completely different depending on which martial art you're using. You're trying to adjust one part or another part of that, one of those different factors in the equation of hurting other people. You're trying to adjust one or other of the factors. And because there's so many factors in a fight, in a full fight, there's a lot of different ways to come at it, because you can adjust any of the factors to be able to achieve victory. But it's important to realize the math, because those are very clear and simple concepts when you break it down like that, and start from there. What am I doing with a punch? Well, I'm creating enough force to overcome the person's rib cage, face, whatever, and I'm doing that by creating distance. A horse puts your arm back and locked behind you, and then you push forward and rotate. Well, I'm creating more distance from my fist by rotating. Horse is a position in one of the martial arts. It's not a military martial art, it's just a normal one. But you come back and then you go forward and you're creating more distance for your hand to cover. Then you're rotating, which creates more distance. It also creates because it creates more distance because now you're straightening, bent line, straight line of your arms. And then you impact, right? So you created more force, you created more speed. You've done it at the same. You've not created more speed. You've done it at the same speed, which means those two different T's, those three different T's actually, of your initial placement and because if your initial placement is 0, you're not moving, then your last one has to be only divided by its own T and the bottom T to be able to be multiplied by your mass. And then if you throw your hip and whatnot into it, you're just adding more mass. You're adding your shoulders and your hips. Well, guess what? That's most of your mass is between your shoulders and your hips, because that's your core, that's your torso, that's where most of your mass lives. So the math is important. It's important to realize what you're really doing is factoring these things down. And I'm saying, Metatron, I agree with one point, but it's important to reference why. So thank you for your time, and hopefully Metatron realizes that I absolutely adore his stuff, and this is in no way a correction, it's just a commentary in addition to an addendum. Thank you very much.